So for this part of the conversation, let's take a different tack by looking a little closer about the business perspective coming from Miles and Boyle. Okay. More specifically here, the topic is on seizing the opportunity to emerge stronger after COVID-19. Okay. So the question now to Miles and Boyle is, well, let me put it a little bluntly. So being part of this collective initiative clearly made business sense. Okay. And from the way it looks, the market is there, the demand is there, and it's seemingly unending, right? And there are clear pathways to scale and the basis for collaboration with this ecosystem already, so that everyone has a piece of the pie. So what happens when this is all over? When the epidemic peters out, and things more or less kind of volume dies down, what happens then?
Okay, maybe I take on this first bit. Yes. Okay. So in my company, I've typically been a hardware supplier. Okay. I have a company on the side which is aimed essentially at helping the medical industry, typically from anatomical modeling type things. So it would be a very much a low volume, highly complex in some cases, but definitely a low volume requirement. And the swab thing has really changed the capability for my company to be able to offer the ability to do literally, as Choseng has mentioned, millions of parts where we would not have had that currently, right? And while, okay, I take the fact that, depending on the technologies you use, whether or not you can be as cost effective as traditional manufacturing, I guess, depends somewhat on the materials that one's using in the 3D printers. But ultimately, I would say to you what this has been is definitely an eye-opener in terms of certainly the hundreds of thousands and being able to move the time frames in a much quicker way. That is a capability that certainly my company wouldn't have had to date in Singapore. Now, if you say what happens after swabs, and if it's the same design and it's fixed for millions and millions and millions, well, we have lots of other industries. So if I give you one that people are probably very familiar with, which is clear aligners, right? Invisalign type clear aligners, okay? Yeah. And the interesting thing about that is that today, for instance, they are producing literally hundreds of thousands of these per day, right? But what's very different about this is each particular one is different. So unlike the swab design where we have a fixed design doing millions and millions of them, what we have in fact in the dental area is someone doing millions and millions, but each one being completely different. So essentially what we're running into what we call mass customization. So in terms of how this helps us be more competitive moving forward, we would not have had that capability in-house today to be able to address the market like that without having essentially a countrywide initiative to help enable us with a specific project. So for me, this has been a tremendous opportunity in terms of how we could essentially look at our business moving forward and address different market segments.
Okay. And Boyle?
Yep. So for Structo, actually, we're a machine manufacturer, right? We make 3D printer, and traditionally, before this whole COVID-19 situation, we have always been very focused on one particular industry, and I think Miles already mentioned this, which is dental industry, right? Dental industry is not very popular, and people don't really talk about it. But the reality of it is that the biggest 3D printing user in the world by far is dental industry. There's a location in Mexico and in the US basically where they literally print hundreds and thousands of dental models every day. And some of them are using our machines basically. So we're very familiar with this industry. So when this whole swab thing came to us basically, we sort of had to shift a little bit from being a supplier to supply ourselves basically. So that's why we buy back from the machines from our customers, and we set up the manufacturing line ourselves. And it's been good because in the past we always told ourselves, okay, you know what, we just want to supply the machines and the technology, but we don't really want to do the production ourselves. But having gone through the production and all that, now we realize that, okay, this is one aspect that we obviously can do going forward, right? So to your question on after this whole thing is over, what next? Obviously, the dental industry is not going to go anywhere anytime soon. We will still be back there, and I think that's where our bread and butter is. But also at the same time, to complement that, we are actually right now looking at probably producing things ourselves, maybe. Yeah.
Okay. So thanks for pointing out. I have no idea the dental side of it is so big, but when I think about that, naturally, of course, you think of the population, right? The demographics, the boomers are right now kind of in that right age group where they're starting to need all these dental devices. I don't know what you call them. Yeah. But
and
it makes perfect sense. Yeah.
Right. And I think what Miles said is exactly what it is, right? It's mass customization because if you think about it, dental job, people's job is very unique. It's almost like a fingerprint. Basically, everybody has their own unique set of jaws, and because it's unique, so if you want to make something out of it, it has to be customized. So it's really mass customization, and the only technology that is suitable for that kind of thing is 3D printing.
Can I ask a little more specifically then, what kind of new capabilities have arisen for you in terms of this initiative? Like, apart from the sheer volume of it, I gather maybe some technical aspect of it that require a little more precision, perhaps that you were not really paying that much attention to, like Miles was mentioning earlier, the kind of things that you're producing earlier were body parts, I gather, which may not necessarily require that much intricacy, if I may put it that way.
Is that for me?
Yeah.
Okay. I would say, I think there are a number of things that we've learned from this. One is actually the teamwork that Jerry had mentioned earlier between the various different requirements in terms of the regulatory bodies. And I think it's key here that we say that actually no shortcuts have been made when it's come to the regulatory requirement side of things. What has been accelerated, and this is really to do with the team effort and the requirements, would have been the whole clinical aspect, and essentially Dr. David Allen and his team, and how fast that was actually put through. Because there was a national crisis, and they stepped up and helped essentially create that. And the other thing I would say, again, it comes back to the 3D printing aspect of it, but is the fact that Jerry and his team didn't actually have to make any allowances for the manufacturing technology that would be used. So I can tell you that Dr. Ho had mentioned about injection molding stream. Well, they can't actually use the design that was created for the 3D printing track, right? So this is an area where I would say to you that 3D printing is being aimed with the benefits that we can do in terms of the design and the efficacy of the design itself, without having to make any allowances for the technology that is going to produce it. Now, I'm not trying to say that an injection molded design won't work. I'm just saying to you that they had to redesign it in order to meet traditional manufacturing technologies. Okay, so we have this new capability, if you wish, that we can design for benefit or design for purpose without having to make compromises for traditional manufacturing technologies. And then I would say to you, for me personally, what this has been in terms of a learning experience, apart from working with the different entities, is obviously how we can do mass manufacturing with 3D printers. And there are some, I suppose, differences in that regard. So one would be, there is a concern, let's say, in the marketplace, particularly that, this is not something that perhaps has been done with a specific device. I mean, it's difficult to add some of the regulatory requirements when if you're talking about, let's say, going back to dental, each part is unique, all right?
Mm-hmm.
But what we were doing essentially is producing one part in millions, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in that regard, to be honest, and Dr. Hurd mentioned it before, the key here was that we are leveraging the medical standards in terms of ISO 13485, okay? And that brings in process with quality control and checking, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
PV, along with HSA and Dr. Ho's team, also put out a white paper, if you wish, in terms of best practices in how we could all move forward to make this happen. So there is a huge regulatory requirement aspect as part of this. Now, the material itself, yes, this is actually coming from, in my case, Form Labs, and they have already, this is being used in different designs worldwide. We have FDA CE approval. Then again, HSA is able to leverage these kind of approvals so that we don't have any regulatory issues on the material itself. So that's really, for me, would be the major, let's say, learning points that I had from this exercise.
How about you, Boyle? Any further insights on what you took away from this experience?
For us, I mean, obviously, like a lot of the things that Miles mentioned earlier, we share the same thing, right? I think teamwork is very important, and I think the past, how many weeks was that? Was it like 6 or 7 weeks? Or it was very intense, literally every day. I think there was no Saturday or Sunday for us, but I think we all did it because we know that this was for good cause, basically, right? A lot of learning, right? I mean, obviously, for us, our team, we knew nothing about swabs, and we just like learn along the way, basically. Of course, I'm very fortunate because I mean, I am basically right now representing a team of very talented engineers that are working. I mean, they're behind the scene. Like, I mean, people don't see them, but they are actually really the ones that build the whole thing, right? I'm just the face of it, right? So all those things are, I mean, it's been very valuable experience for us. But one thing for sure for us, and for me anyway, if I want to take one thing about like one very big point of learning here is about manufacturing, about scaling up manufacturing. I think it's one thing about making a prototype to be successful. It's another thing to be making a few prototypes to be successful, and it's completely different thing to be making millions of like high quality product, right? And there is a learning curve there, and obviously because this thing was not our industry per se, so it took a while for us at the beginning to just fine tuning here, fine tuning there, fine tuning here, fine tuning there again, but we're getting there. So that's one of the very big learning that we have, and people tend to not appreciate manufacturing, right? Because it's not as sexy as, for example, the R&D part of it, right? Like, oh, we are making a new design, we're doing this cool prototype thing, but really being able to day in, day out replicate the same thing with high quality and making sure that the things that we churn out to customers, and in this case to clinicians, basically, are of the same standard every time. That's a challenge, and that's something that we learned.
And sometimes the seemingly simplest things of like, oh, just do it over and over and over again, that is kind of underrated, right? People
Yes. Manufacturing is a skill.
Okay. Yeah. So I guess from hearing from you both, I was a little bit like, surprised, well, slightly surprised that it seems like the soft aspects, the human factors and collaborative aspects were where you guys focused on in terms of where you saw the main experiential learnings, as far as your experience of this initiative goes. It's not so much technological innovation, the intricacies of coming up with the technology itself. It's more the human side of it, So that's quite interesting. I never saw that coming. So thank you. That was insightful.
I mean, it's always the human behind, right?
Yeah. Well,
Right?
for better or for worse.
People tend to forget about these things, right? But
Yeah.
really, it's the engineers, the technicians, the people, the operators who operate machines, all these people who, I mean, they will never be named. People don't
Right.
know
Yeah.
about them, but these are the people who actually
Yeah.
make these things happen.
Yeah. And the fact that I noticed you both are actually in the dental space, you kind of are competitors in a sense, right? The fact that you're not at loggerheads now, that's like, wow, kudos to you.
Well, I don't know if Miles
No?
is actually strictly speaking on
No?
in dental field.
Not at
Miles,
all?
maybe you wanna.
Are you in dental space?
Well, we supply equipment into the dental space.
Ah, okay.
We're coming at this slightly from different.
Mm,
So they're an actual machine manufacturer. I'm a
okay.
seller of machines. The
Okay.
end it is similar for both,
Mm-hmm.
but we have a different set of machines that we
Right.
would serve the dental market
Mm,
for, right?
okay.
And
Mm,
typically, we have bunches of customers in Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, which is our main footprint, and Formlabs would have worldwide, or even a company called Seagate,
right.
right?
Yeah. Mm,
So in terms of, let's say, the technical aspects of it, yeah, we're very familiar with the equipment, right? And what benefits essentially to each different technology that this equipment can bring, right? The dental one is interesting just purely because there is more of a digital revolution occurring within that industry. And obviously, if it's digital, then you're talking about 3D printing. So, and because of the fact that, let's say, traditional manufacturing has been, in this case, very manual. Okay. So it's not as though you have an injection molding machine in the current situation producing millions of parts. No, it's very much a manual style process. So both what Struxtos provides in terms of the hardware and what we provide as a third party
okay. Hey.
selling similar hardware, if you wish.
Okay. Okay.
Yes, we both have dental.
Right.
But I think one of the key aspects, honestly, in what we now both bring to the party is the fact that if you look at general manufacturing, is this capability which is still really yet to take off, is the whole aspect of design. Okay, so if you design for purpose, the reason is that so much of design today is still very much driven around what we can produce in traditional manufacturing technology, such as injection molding, right? And what we're seeing is there is a move, right? There is definitely a shift towards, let's say, more manufacturing. And I use the term mass customization. But even if you said, you talk to a traditional injection molding person, they don't really want to have to do things less than, X 1,000 pieces or whatever. So it would be difficult for them to address certain markets. Hence, you wouldn't see them in things like dental.
Right.
But there are, many, let's say, case studies. I mean, some which I'm happy to share if people want, but in terms of how design, completely changes the way that a particular part is manufactured. When you use just design tools to do that without any, let's say, input for compromise in terms of traditional manufacturing, it's amazing the type of shapes that are created,
Yeah.
okay, which can only then be designed, or
Yeah.
rather
Yeah.
manufactured in 3D printing.
Manufacturable, even, right?
Right, and we don't have the same constraints. And I think, what has been an eye-opener, as Boyle has basically said for them and us in terms of the manufacturing space, is the capability that we now have addressed. Whereas, we were focused, as I said, on primarily selling equipment, always focused on manufacturing equipment and producing new equipment. And now we both have capabilities to actually mass manufacturing. Now, what we wind up doing with that, we may go in slightly different directions with it. My main reason for mentioning dental was, as Boyle said, it is what people don't realize. It is, probably, I say probably, and it maybe is, the largest user of 3D printers in the world in terms of the number of parts produced. I would say absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, so, and there are a number of different companies out there doing it in high volume, and they're using different 3D printing technologies. So it doesn't mean that everybody uses one particular technology. SLA would have been the one that, let's say, I mentioned to you with the invisible braces aligned to, or Invisalign, as people know, and that would definitely have been initially an SLA technology, but that is not the only technology that's being used today.
Right.
And as Will said, you know, his technology is slightly different, and he has a market share within the dental industry. So it's interesting, yes, to be an end user of our products rather than just always selling the product.
Yes.
Great, thank you. Yeah, so thank you so much for your roles in driving the message of this, if I may put it this way, a paradigm shift, right, in terms of manufacturing, right? It's not just a concept anymore. It's not just theoretical. You're actually making it happen and showing that it's viable, right? So I think we have some other questions, but I'm afraid we're coming out of time. So perhaps we can take these questions off onto interchange after this session, where we actually encourage most of our audiences to actually join us on the interchange platform, where we get a chance to actually continue interactions and conversations with our speakers, and also get a chance to tackle the questions that some of you have asked. And with that, thank you so much for joining us today.